We can pick up things from the people we abide with, can't we? Do you do something because your mom or dad did it? Do you do something or say a certain phrase because your good friend says that phrase all the time? Have you changed the words that you use or the things that you do because of someone that you're close to? When we abide, it changes us. It changes the words that we use, and it changes the way that we do things. Which is why moving in with someone can be a challenge. I've had a few roommates over the years, and with each roommate, I got a new way that I had to shift how I was doing things so that we could abide in harmony. Have you been there? Some of these things can be really silly, like whether you leave the shower curtain open or closed after you're finished. How you fold your towels, where the silverware drawer should be in the kitchen, how many times you're allowed to press the snooze button. And my poor husband has to eat more vegetables because he abides with me. But some of the ways that we change in order to abide with someone else might require some major sacrifices. Perhaps you had to change your schedule so that you could spend more time with the person that you love. Maybe you had to drop a habit because it was straining your relationship and it was important to you. At different points in our careers, Britt and I have both moved so that the other one could pursue a passion or a dream, and those moves always required a major sacrifice on the part of the other person. Sometimes abiding has meant that we had to let go of our anger and disappointment so that we could extend grace to someone who screwed up. Other times it's meant that we needed to apologize and make amends for the words or the behaviors that have harmed others. Our text for today picks right up after the text that we read last week in the Gospel of John. Jesus isn't done with his teaching yet. He wants to make sure that his disciples are getting it, to make sure that they are getting the point that he is trying to drive home. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love. And Jesus tells them, this is my commandment, love each other in the same way that I have loved you. There's no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. Love one another as I have loved you. And the Greek word used for love here is agape, which is a love that shows goodwill, benevolence, charity. It's a sacrificial kind of love, and it's a love that cares for others without expecting something in return. So tonight I really want to dive into what it might look like to abide in Jesus' love. Because in this passage, keeping Jesus' commandment to love each other and our ability to abide in Jesus seem to be deeply connected. And it can be all hearts and flowers and roses when you and I think about abiding in Jesus' love for us. But loving others to the point of having to make a sacrifice, well, that part can be hard. And I think it's important for us to stop and name some dangerous conceptions about loving others that Jesus isn't trying to talk about here. So loving one another doesn't mean that we will always agree on everything with everyone. Loving one another doesn't mean that we should put ourselves in harmful situations or with harmful people. Loving one another doesn't mean we should stay in an abusive relationship. That is not the sacrificial love that Jesus is talking about here. Abiding in Jesus, laying down your life for your friend, it's not about becoming the world's punching bag. In fact, if you read the Gospels, you'll see that Jesus himself was not afraid to disagree with people. Jesus was not afraid to walk away from dangerous situations or to confront individuals who were trying to control other people. The point Jesus is trying to make here, I think, is that abiding in him is about loving others the same way that he has loved you, which is hard. Because it means that you and I are going to have to disrupt some of the accepted systems of this world. As I shared last week, I know for a fact that when you disrupt the status quo, it will cause you to lose some of your relationships, or even cause you to lose your life as you once knew it. And yet, the Gospel of John, Jesus invites us to not choose control, to not choose power, to not choose hate in the face of these kinds of situations, but to choose love, which is very different from what our culture teaches, right? In our culture, it's normal to protect and solidify wealth and power for yourself. In our culture, it's acceptable to not worry about people that you have no connection to. In our culture, we think that people should get what they deserve. And in our culture, it is normal to say what people in power want to hear so that we can keep them on our side and achieve maybe some power for ourselves. But when you choose to abide in Jesus and you love each other in the same way Jesus loves you, you're not worried about building power or wealth for yourself. Jesus continually sided with the poor, with the outcast, not the powerful and not even the super religious. When you abide in Jesus, you don't just look out for your own interest. Instead, you consider the health and the well-being of people around you. Jesus was constantly looking out for people in need, providing hope, healing, and restoration to so many individuals. Instead of letting people get what they deserve, Jesus made sure that a wedding didn't run out of their wine, even though they should have planned and they should have known better. He made sure that the sick were healed, even though in their culture they believed sickness was a consequence for someone's sin. And instead of following the regular practice of saying what people in power wanted to hear, man, Jesus spoke out against the religious elite. He scolded them for the way that they use their rules and traditions to harm people. Friends, Jesus fed the hungry, shared his table with tax collectors and sinners. Jesus taught us that we should love our enemies and bless people who curse us. Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers, not the power brokers. Jesus proclaimed that he had been anointed to preach the good news to the poor, and that his ministry was about bringing healing to the brokenhearted. Jesus was put to death because of the scheming of the religious leaders, because Jesus wouldn't fall into line or do what they thought he should do. Instead, he seemed to show them up on every occasion by performing jaw-dropping miracles and having the perfect response to every plot that they had to try and trip him up. Jesus' entire life and ministry were a living, breathing, embodied example of what it might look like to abide in God's love. What it might look like to love one another, even to the point of laying your life down for your friends. And yet Jesus said if we follow this command to love others, even though it is hard, that our joy will overflow. And perhaps you've already had this experience. We are made to love and to look out for the needs of others. And when we do that, it's like a lightning rod for joy. Has anyone ever done something where they provided a need for someone, supported someone, and you just came away with this deep sense of fulfillment, joy, peace? Loving others and sacrificing for the good of others always seems to bring deep and abiding joy. And when we abide in Jesus and we live our lives in extravagant and loving ways towards others, we don't just live a good story with our own lives, but those stories of our lives help others to have hope, and it inspires others to do the same. When we love others, when we abide in Jesus, that abiding changes us. In the same way that abiding with our friends, partners, family, and loved ones changes us by that connection. So what might it look like for you to abide in Jesus? What would it look like for you to lean into this different way of living, of not just looking out for yourself, but looking out for the people in need around you?
Hello, friends. My name is Britt Detain, and my pronouns are he, him. I attended college next door at the University of Kansas, and during my freshman year, a friend introduced me to Alternative Breaks. Alternative Breaks is a program where instead of going home or on vacation during a school break like winter break or spring break, you as a student instead travel to a partner organization site for a week and perform community service. There were several sites available to choose from, but I applied for and was selected to be a part of the group helping at the Terrence Cardinal Cook Healthcare Center in New York City during spring break. Located around the northeast corner of Central Park near Harlem, the Terrence Cardinal Cook Healthcare Center is a former hospital that was purchased by the Catholic Archdiocese of New York and converted into a care facility for individuals with AIDS and other diseases requiring special care. During our time there, we carried out a number of duties, including cleaning, painting, and moving furniture around. But we also had the opportunity to interact with a few patients who were hanging out near where we were working or while we were eating a meal. These interactions not only removed a lot of stigmas I had around being around people who have AIDS, but it also provided an up-close view of the devastating effects of AIDS in its latter stages. We were only there for a few days. Time flew by quickly, and before we knew it, we were back in our van, returning back to Kansas. The trip, though, was a powerful experience for me. I had volunteered before, but I hadn't felt the impact afterwards that I did with this trip. It inspired me to actually sign up and do future alternative spring breaks over the next 2 years, as well as start considering in my mind how I might be able to get involved in my own community. I encourage all of you to consider how you might use your talents, abilities, and resources to give back to nonprofit organizations around you, maybe even your faith community, like this one. Who knows, you might even experience joy or feel as much or more impacted than the people you are helping.